in the file. Thank you. Thank you. Next on the steps.
Kleenex is the other thing I always need.
I do too. I don't know what it is, but
Allergies. My watch is apparently
Good morning. My name's Joanna Allen, and I use the pronoun she, her. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Brunswick. UUCB is located on the ancestral homelands of the Wabanaki people, who have deep, enduring, and ongoing relationships with Brunswick's lands and waterways. We acknowledge the painful legacy of the region's colonial history and commit to better understanding it. We will work to recognize and welcome the presence and concerns of the Wabanaki, whose people and culture live within and contribute to the vitality of this community that we share. Today is Sunday, August 17th. I had to look. The Reverend Maddie Sifontus is leading the service today. I see that Derek Hertzler is back doing music for us, which is wonderful. If you're new or visiting today and would like more information about our congregation, please stop at the visitors table in the fellowship hall. The folks there will be very happy to speak with you. In the interest of safety, please note that there are 3 exits to this church. There's one to the right, just as you came in. There's one just over here by the AV booth, and there is one right at the back of the church, right through the back. One more thing, please silence your cell phones so that they don't go off. I say that, and mine goes off occasionally. Do you have an announcement? And Mary has one announcement, and I just want to say, again, I'm really happy that you're here today.
Good morning. I'm Mary Larson. I use she, her pronouns. The announcement I have is about the church picnic that's this afternoon. The postcard that came out had the wrong address. Holy moly. So the correct address is 646 Lewiston Road. And that's the main road that goes from Topsom to Lewiston. It's Route, 196. And if you go out there, there's the River Road intersection, and immediately after that is the driveway to the Pajebska Day School. It's next door to the Berniers' home, but Berniers don't have a driveway big enough for all the cars. And there is big amount of parking down at the Pajebska Day School. So please stay right on 196. It's across from Happy Paws. There's going to be signs, and there's a sign in the road that says Pajebska Day School, and go down there. And there's room for parking. Bring a chair and something to share, and we'll all have a great time.
Can you please say the address again?
She didn't want it announced on the phone, but it's 646 Lewiston Road. There'll be balloons too, yes. So join us. Everybody is welcome for the picnic. Yeah, you go down and say.
Abaddon, entouré d'Abaddon, tendresse touchant nos tendresses, c'est ton intérieur qui sans cesse se caresse. Dire, dire, tant, dire, tant, dire tant. pour son propre reflet éclairé. Ainsi tu inventes le thème de narcisse exalté. Tendresse touchant, ô tendresse, c'est ton antérieur qui sans cesse se caresse. Diri-diri-tom, diri-tom, diri-tom. Dire-dire-tom, dire-tom, dire-dire-dire-tom. Dire-dire-tom, dire-tom, dire-tom, dire-dire-tom, dire-tom. Dire-tom, on dire-dire-ton, dire-dire-ton.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Holmes. The chalice reading this morning is titled Each and All by Reverend Maddie Cefantis. We light the chalice of our faith for the way each one of us walks or moves through our world, and the way this congregation moves together, letting all our voices being heard. May we each speak our truth to each other and the large world in love.
Good morning again. I'm Mary Larson. I'm a member of the worship committee. I welcome you all to the service this morning, no matter where you are from, what you believe, who you love. This is a place where we welcome everyone. I'm very happy this morning to be introducing our guest minister, Reverend Maddie Sifantis. Close enough. I didn't know when we arranged to have her come we were getting such a marvelous singer. And that was one of my favorite songs, and it was just beautiful. She's recently retired from her UU ministry in California and has been traveling through New England this summer, visiting friends, leading church services, and in Brunswick, connecting with our colleagues. Our Minister Emerita Sylvia Stocker and Reverend Lucy Iams, who's in our AV booth this morning and will do the children's story, or the story for all ages. Reverend Maddie and Sylvia attended seminary together, and they've been friends for all of those years, and they participated in each other's ordinations. She has chosen the following opening words by David Breeden. We gather into this circle. We gather into this circle of care to dream, to envision, to embody and achieve the compassion we dream, the justice we envision, the dignity of each in an ever-growing circle of love and justice. Our opening hymn this morning will be in our gray hymnal, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. You may stand or sit as you wish.
I'm reading a story that is, well, it's our folklore, actually. My name is Lucy Iams, and I use she, her pronouns. This is The Wind of Change, John Murray Comes to America, which is adapted from a story by Janine Grossmeyer. Over 200 years ago, when this country was known as the 13 Colonies, across the ocean in England, there lived a man named John Murray with his wife Eliza. They were very religious people. Every Sunday they got up early, got dressed, ate their breakfast, and went to church. Sometimes John Murray would preach a sermon and talk to the people about God. The church was not a place to be happy. No one smiled. No one laughed. No one even sang. The followers of that religion, called Calvinism, believed that all of the people were going to a very bad place they called hell. They were taught that God would let only a few people into heaven. No matter what the people did, even if they were really nice and really, really tried hard to be good, they still couldn't go to heaven, no matter what. The religion in that church was a very serious business, and the people were expected to be serious too. One day, John and Eliza heard of a man named Mr. Relly. Mr. Relly was of a different religion, a religion which taught that people didn't have to go to hell, a religion where people could be happy. Finally, after talking about it for weeks, John and Eliza decided to listen to what Mr. Relly had to say. The next Sunday, they got up early, got dressed, ate their breakfast, and went to Mr. Relly's church instead of their own. At that church, people smiled. Someone actually laughed. When it came time for the sermon, Mr. Relly got up to preach. He said, "God loves all his children. God doesn't have favorites. Everyone in the world has a chance to go to heaven and to be saved from the fires of hell. Salvation is universal." Mr. Relly was a universalist, and after hearing his sermon, John and Eliza decided they were universalists too. The people at their old church weren't universalists. "Mr. Murray," they said very sternly, "have you and your wife been listening to that heretic, Mr. Relly?" "Yes, sirs, we have." "And do you believe such nonsense, that all people have the chance to be saved?" "Yes, sirs, we do." "Mr. Murray," they said, appalled, "you mustn't say such things." "Yes," said John Murray, "I must." And they said, "Oh, no, you won't." And he said, "Oh, yes, I will." And they said, "Well, you can't say them here. You and your wife have to leave this church." Poor John and Eliza Murray. None of their old friends would talk to them, and they were lonely and sad. When Eliza had a baby, the Murrays were happy for a while, but the baby got sick, and Eliza got sick. John had to borrow money to pay the doctors. He borrowed more and more money and went to more and more doctors, but they couldn't help. His wife and baby died. And then he was arrested because he couldn't pay back the money he had borrowed. So there John Murray sat, all alone in jail, with no job, no money, no family, and no friends. He figured that he must have failed God, failed his family, and failed himself. He decided he was never going to preach again, ever. After a few days, Eliza's brother paid the money that John owed, and he was freed from jail. But John could not be happy. He wanted to start a new life in a new land. So he bought a ticket on a sailing ship named Hand in Hand. The ship had very large white sails that were filled by the wind, which blew and blew. The wind blew John Murray all the way across the Atlantic Ocean from England, far, far away, to the new land. The wind blew the ship to a place he hadn't planned to go, to New Jersey instead of New York. The Hand in Hand became stranded on a sandbar off the coast, and the sailors couldn't move the ship because the wind kept blowing them into the shore. There wasn't enough food and other provisions left on the ship. So John Murray climbed out and waded ashore to a place called Barnegat Bay. There he met a farmer, Thomas Potter, who invited him into his house for supper. John Murray was surprised to learn that Thomas Potter also believed in a loving God, and he believed in universal salvation. He believed in it so much that 10 years before John Murray was blown in by the wind, he had built a little church by hand on his land. For 10 years, he waited and waited for the right preacher to arrive. Now here he was. But John Murray didn't want to preach, not at all. I swore I would never preach again, ever. Mr. Potter said, "I believe God sent you here to preach in the church that I built. I believe the wind will never change until you have preached to the people a message from God. Tell me, sir, if that wind does not change by Sunday morning, will you take it as a sign from God that you should preach again?" John thought about this for a long while, and finally he said, "I will." The wind didn't stop blowing for days. Because the wind had not changed, on Sunday morning, the 30th of September, 1770, John Murray got up early, got dressed, ate his breakfast, and went to church. And he preached. In the church Thomas Potter had built, he preached of a loving and caring God. He preached of universal salvation, the idea that all people everywhere in the world could go to heaven and be saved. He said, "You possess only a small light, but uncover it, let it shine." Afterward, when the people thanked him for his sermon, John Murray changed. He changed his mind about going to church again, and he changed his mind about being a preacher. 9 years later, in the town of Gloucester, Massachusetts, John Murray became the minister of the very first organized Universalist church in America. He traveled and preached many other places around this country and became known as one of the founders of American Universalism. The church that Thomas Potter built isn't there anymore, but Universalists are still there, Unitarian Universalists now. If you go to New Jersey, there on the shores of Barnegat Bay, you can stay at a special UU retreat center named Murray Grove, in honor of the man who decided to preach again and let his light shine.
Good morning. My name is Sylvia Stalker, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm delighted that Maddie is here. And just a very quick note about Maddie. We did participate in each other's ordinations. We both sang in each other's ordinations. We sang during the laying on of hands. I led a congregational song at hers, and she led a congregational song at mine. And Maddie is a much better singer. Before we read the words by Olympia Brown, I want to tell you something about her, because she's someone whose shoulders we stand on. She's one of those giants. Olympia Brown was a Universalist minister, and not just any Universalist minister. She was the first woman minister who was ordained in one of the many Christian denominations in the United States, who was recognized by that denomination. There was another Brown by the name of Antoinette Brown, who was a Congregationalist minister, who was ordained, I think, by her congregation, but was never recognized by the larger denomination. So Olympia Brown has the distinction of having been ordained right around the same time as Antoinette Brown, but recognized by her denomination, the Universalist denomination. And so that's who Olympia, she was also a suffragist. She was a very amazing person. She was born 190 years ago, so that would be what, 1835? She died in 1923, so she did live long enough to see women get the right to vote, something she worked very hard to achieve. So let's read together our responsive reading. Stand by this faith, work for it, and sacrifice for it. Which has comforted in sorrow, strengthened us. I can't actually see the screen. There's too much light on it. Strengthened us for noble duty and made the world beautiful. That you were strong enough to work for a great true principle without counting the cost. Olympia Brown.
Good marching orders from the past, I say. I understand that you know this next little piece of music, There Is a Love, which was written by Rebecca Parker. The words were written by Rebecca Parker, who was the president of Starr King School for the Ministry out in California. And Elizabeth Norton, Beth, is the music director still at First Parish in Concord, Massachusetts. I'm going to line it out like how they used to do it back when there wasn't instruments in congregations. And I think you know it already, but we're going to do it a cappella, which means unaccompanied. So I'm going to sing a line, and you're going to sing it back to me. And then I'm going to sing another line, and you're going to sing that one back to me, on like that, and then we'll sing the whole thing. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. There is a love holding all. I rest in that love. I rest in that love. Again. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in that love holding us. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in that love. We rest in that love.
Good morning. I'm Sue Labes. My pronouns are she, her. I'm going to read the joys this morning. I know there are concerns. They're not written in the book. It was a joy and a thrill to be in a Boston bookstore last week to see my cousin and goddaughter, Meg, on a publicity tour for her first book, Are You Mad at Me? Was released on August 5th, Lucy Imes. And Mike Heath writes, new and improved body parts are a challenge and a joy. When it stops hurting, I'll be able to smile and revel in new mobility. Thank you to this wonderful church community for food, cards, and support. And my niece sends thanks as well. If you are unable to attend church to write in the book and you'd like to have a message put in the Joys and Concerns, you may email us at joys-and-concerns@UUCB or uubrunswick.org. And if you'd like to talk to someone in private, we have blue ribbons on our name tags, and we'd be glad to listen. And enjoy the picnic today.
Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Here in this congregation, we center love. May we rest in the love we share here and which expresses our values in this historic Universalist building across the miles to those who are out there in the virtual world, wherever they may be. Let us pause for this moment to sense the community gathered this morning, gathered within these walls and in far-flung places, bringing love, bringing justice to this hurting world and these complicated times. There can be a love holding us all only if we reach out to one another in love, with depth of listening and compassion. There is a love that can open our doors to a wider welcome, bringing our message for all beings, acceptance for all beings, especially for those marginalized or troubled in this time, troubled in body, troubled in mind. May our love bring healing. May our love bring healing mercies. May each of us, every day, let our light shine. Let's not hide it behind these walls. Or, as the father of universalism, John Murray, famously said, as we have heard, you possess only a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. May it be so. Amen. Please join in singing with me, Spirit of Life. When I started out as a UU, I was at First Parish in Wayland, Mass., which was a very humanist Unitarian church. And the gray hymnal came out during that time, and Spirit of Life was in it. And our music director wrote a descant to it. And I'm going to be singing that descant as you all are singing Spirit of Life one time. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing my heart, all the stirrings of compassion. dedicate that to the late Peggy Cruson, who wrote that beautiful descant. I try to keep it alive, along with our Universalist faith and a few other things. I have a couple of short readings by another one of our Universalist founders, Hosea Ballou. And the first ones are some of our core words from the origins of us as Universalists. Your heritage here in this congregation. These words were written by one of the founders of the Universalist Church of America, Hosea Ballou. Father Ballou, as he was sometimes known, was born in 1771 in Richmond, New Hampshire, and he died in 1852 in Boston. Originally, he was a Baptist, and he became a Universalist in 1789. Ballou was a clergyman and a theological writer, most especially known for his writing a treatise on atonement. Not something you want, it's not bedtime reading, really. It's pretty dense stuff. He preached in a number of towns in Vermont and New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and I suspected he also preached in Maine. Father Ballou famously wrote these words: "If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. If we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace." And my second little reading, also from Hosea Ballou. As you have heard, I retired almost exactly 1 year ago from the Universalist Unitarian Church of Santa Paula, which I served for 10 years. While there, I became interested in how Universalism spread from its roots in America, in the Northeast, across the country, eventually having several congregations in Southern California, along with our Universalist roots, one might say today. I'm just really curious about how our Universalism keeps its thread going through Unitarian Universalism. And I discovered along the way that there was a California pilgrimage made by congregations from across the country, as it was at the time, to a Universalist convention which took place in 1915 in California. 300 Universalists making their way west on the railroads and landing in our congregations in Riverside and then Pasadena, and they mentioned Santa Paula in some of their writings. You'll be hearing more about it, but they say they had on a daily newspaper on the train that they rode on, and they also had a hymnal made for the trip, which was called Songs Along the Way. None of its selections are sung in our congregations anymore. They reflect a different way of talking about our faith than we have most of the time today, as Universalism has changed a lot over the more than 100 years since that pilgrimage and in the earliest days of Universalism in America. So I wanted to read one verse from Hosea Ballou's hymn, which was called In God's Eternity. When music fills the grove, when stormy clouds are past, sweet anthems of redeeming love shall all employ at last. There'll be no sorrow there, there'll be no sorrow there. In heaven above, where all is love, there'll be no sorrow there. That is pure Universalism. So it is my great pleasure to be here with you today in your historically Universalist congregation. In my parish ministries, I somehow, and we don't plan for some of the things that happen in our lives, do we? Somehow I became a specialist in serving formerly Universalist congregations, most of them very small. Wakefield and Milford in Massachusetts, and then Santa Paula in California. And since I enjoy filling pulpits, of colleagues when I'm asked. I've filled a number of other small Universalist pulpits, often in the state of Maine, because I have a lot of contacts up here. And today I'm here with you, and I'm so pleased to be here. And along the way, I discovered that my theology was inspired by our Universalist roots, putting love at the center, as we now say in our current values.
You've got to stay closer to the mic.
I have a really big voice, so I hear the voice coming back at me and think it's too loud. But apparently I need to be closer. Our UU's values are now rooted in love. And actually, my stole today has love written on it. It's made by my last congregation. So today I'm looking at the stream of universalism within Unitarian Universalism, blending it this morning with a focus on pilgrimage, which suits many of us in the summer, right? Maybe you travel to an area that means a lot to you, as I did this past month, to Bradford, New Hampshire, a little town on the shores of Lake Massasauga, where I learned how to swim when I was growing up, and where a cousin of mine still owns a cottage. And I think about how the people who founded my congregation that I left in Santa Paula took a pilgrimage across the whole country of their own to find what they thought was going to be a better life, from Caribou, Maine. And you all know where Caribou is. When I talk about it out there, nobody knows where Caribou is, but Caribou is way the heck up there. And they wanted a church like the one they had back home. Before I get to all of that and a fun California pilgrimage, a little explanation that might be helpful for some of those who are newer among us. A little history. You may remember that there was once two denominations, the Universalists and the Unitarians, and they differed considerably from each other going back in history. But eventually they met and merged and consolidated after decades of rapprochement to be the Unitarian Universalist Association back in 1961. Many of you may remember when that happened. Each congregation within both of these denominations had to vote whether to join, and I have to say, it was not a slam dunk. I don't know what your history here was, but I know the one that I served, it was very close, the vote. I wonder how it went here. You can tell me after. A colleague of mine, Kimberly Debus, once served a formerly Universalist congregation where she told me that one of her members was a seventh-generation Universalist. Her family had served the congregation in lay and ministerial positions for nearly the entire life of that church. And in fact, that matriarch made sure that the second thing that Reverend Kimberly learned from her after her name was her lineage in the congregation. Reverend Kimberly had to be careful when she talked about the denomination to lean into the Universalist a bit more than the Unitarian, because every time the matriarch thought that Kimberly forgot that she was serving a Universalist congregation, she reminded her that Unitarian is the adjective that describes what kind of Universalists we are. And then she proceeded to get angry at those people who gathered in Syracuse in 1961 and agreed to the consolidation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church in America. And her arguments are not without merit. There were some concerning issues around the finances and around the leadership, and a fear that the Universalists would be subsumed into the larger whole. And that is something that we can see if we look at our history. But yes, she was still bitter about the merger. But for what you knew, we need to know today is that there were two denominations which merged into one, and this church was Universalist. Several years ago, I went on a sort of pilgrimage during a sabbatical in search of what the founders of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Santa Paula might have brought from what had been the frontier back in the day that they moved in very northern Maine to the far west in the 1880s when most of them moved. A new frontier in that day. Along my way, I noticed that the Universalism had a different flavor than the humanist, formerly Unitarian church I became a UU in, First Parish in Wayland, and then I was, for some years, I was the soloist at First Parish in Concord, another formerly Unitarian congregation famous for Thoreau and Emerson and all of those people. And I was at another humanist congregation in Reading, Mass., where I was the music director for a time, all before I went to seminary. And with all of that and a lot of discernment, I realized I have a great affinity for Universalism. And it's become clear to me it's really important for us all to know our history, even if we don't agree with whatever understanding we have of the theology now. It's really important to know what it was. I used to tell the folks in Wakefield that Universalism permeates the walls in that building, which unfortunately now has closed. It's important to know about Hosea Ballou, both the first and the second, there were two of them, and women such as Olympia Brown, and the story we heard of John Murray's arrival in America, sometimes referred to as the Universalist miracle, and probably has taken on mythological proportions at this point. As I told my Wakefield congregation at their 200th anniversary, it's important to notice the history. I bet it's the same here. There was a lot of history before you had your horrific fire, for instance. There's a lot of things going way back. And every congregation I've been at has a few historians and a whole lot of other people who don't really know the history. So some of my colleagues, those colleagues I've been visiting all across the country this last year and a half now, know that I'm interested in Universalism, and especially they know I'm interested in how it got from Maine to California. And so it was that one of my colleagues and friends, whose name is Jane Jepka, who was retiring at the time, and she was getting rid of a bunch of books, and she found this one book apropos to my current interest, which was called A California Pilgrimage by Frederick A. Bisbee, and published by the Murray Press in Boston in 1915. I've been trying to find out more about who this Bisbee was. He appears to have been a layperson, so here was a layperson was interested in their history. And reading his memoir of this pilgrimage with 300 Universalists across the country was a compelling snapshot of those times. So here are some words by Bisbee himself. It was an adventure of faith and a victory of faith. It was a triumph of cooperation. It was a revelation of our church to ourselves, showing undreamed of capacities and resources. It was a prophecy of a brighter, a bigger, and a better future. End quote. That was quite a tall order for a pilgrimage out west. And I'm still researching, but it doesn't show up anymore in any books about Universalist history, which goes to show that triumphs, as he speaks of it, can be short-lived, and prophecies of a brighter and bigger and better future can come to naught, especially since this pilgrimage took place before 2 world wars, the Depression, the Dust Bowl, and a whole manner of things. In fact, the Harvard Square Library, which is one of the places I consult about historical Resources says this specific conference itself has fallen out of memory. But I responded to the joy that Bisbee takes in the telling of his tales and the glimpse of Southern California universalism in the earliest 20th century that it reveals. And I always look to see what it might bring to us today. So 110 years ago, the United Universalist Conventions met in Pasadena, California for their 1915 convention. This was no ordinary gathering of early 20th century religious liberals. The convention proper started with this train journey that began in Boston and crossed the whole continental United States, stopping at Chicago, Salt Lake City, and other major cities, each time picking up Universalist pilgrims bound for Pasadena, the city where my son and his family now live. Along the way, as you have heard, participants published a newsletter aboard the train and sang from a hymnal and a songbook especially composed for the occasion. So today, we might not think of such a journey to a religious convention to be all that notable. But as this little book makes clear, a journey to the West for the denomination's annual meeting was no less than a stupendous undertaking at this time. The endeavor succeeded, though, in greater proportion than its planners could have even imagined. Several hundred visitors to the Pacific Coast were treated to stunning sights available at that time only in photographs and in the imagination. Towering palm trees, warm breezes, and what remained in many ways a distant frontier to most of these early Universalists. And all of that for $165 round trip from Boston. What he remembered best about the event, though, was that which clings closest and most enduring is the splendid spirit of fellowship, he writes, and the friendships that developed through those memorable weeks together when a group of pilgrims carried the message of their glorious faith, as he puts it, from ocean to ocean. And he was moved to write in this record of the undertaking, and I love this, that the Universalist Church can do a great thing if it really wants to. And that's a good thing that I would keep for today, that Unitarian Universalism can do great things if we really want to, if we stay in the moment. So a large part of the account is of this journey and all the logistical challenges of using rail lines, which were fairly new at the time, to gather 300 Universalists from across the country and get them all the way to Pasadena. A little bit more about it. I loved reading about their daily newspaper, which was written and printed on the train. Bisbee thought that future generations would be reading it, and we can too if we look at the archives in the Andover Harvard Theological School Library, but I suspect there's not a line waiting to read it. I can't even pronounce the name of the paper. It was UGCWUMAYPCUSS, Yugamwamakas, or something like that. But it turns out to be the initials of all of the Universalist groups joining together for the convention, so it meant something to them. And to me, it shows that these Universalists had a sense of fun, and they had a sense of being able to smile in church, as we heard about Murray talking about. Here's another example, a couple of the sleeping car rules from July 4th, 1915. Tete-a-tetes shall not begin earlier than 7 a.m. Do not sleep with an elbow against the bell button. It disturbs the passengers, and it means nothing to the porter. There's a whole bunch of those. So they gathered people up along the way, adding cars to the trains in New York and Chicago and all the way west. They stopped in Salt Lake City, they stopped in the desert, and their first stop in California was the Riverside Church, a church I visited out there. It's still there. And once in Pasadena, where the whole convention was taking place, there were several Universalist groups that were able to meet together for the very first time. The Women's Missionary Society, the General Sunday School Association, the Young People's Christian Union, and finally, the delegate body, the General Convention. And then there were side trips going to various places in California. Bisbee talks a lot about sort of what I call rah-rah universalism and how it showed up on the trip. There was a sign on the front of the train saying, Universalist Conventions and it had California in the center of it. He said that along the way, people would catch sight of the sign and wonder, who were these Universalists? And he comments throughout that great country, there are vast districts where there was no church at that time of any sect. So it's hard, it's hard for us to go back to that time really in our country. I could talk a lot more about universalism, but Bisbee predicted that sometime we are going to be a real church so big and so fraternal that now we would say cousinly or something like that, that there would be no east, no west, no north, no south, but something of the spirit of our name will take possession of us, and we shall all be Universalists and live up to it. There's a lot more in his little book, but I will leave it for now. It just was interesting for me to think that the effort of some 300 or so Universalists went to do the business of this convention, when nowadays we jump on a plane, as I did, to go to Baltimore for our General Assembly. There are always changes in our institutions. There are always changes in our congregations, and we all know we don't like change very much. But that is what happens. The Throop Church in Pasadena, where this convention met, is still active, but since then they've built a new building, and that was like about 10 years after the convention that happened. However, Santa Paula's building has been standing since 1891, which for California is really old. Pretty much none of the songs in Songs Along the Way are sung in our congregations anymore. They reflect a very different way of thinking and talking about faith than most of us have these days. And I think about these Universalists coming back and having World War I start not long afterwards. A pilgrimage is a journey, often into an unknown or foreign place, where a person goes in search of new and expanded meaning about the self, about others, about nature, or a higher good through the experience. And it can lead to personal transformation and when the pilgrim returns to their daily life. So I wonder, as I finish up this morning, if you've been on a pilgrimage. I'm on a pilgrimage to figure out what to do after retirement from settled ministry. I call it the Don't Know Tour. Have you been on a pilgrimage? A pilgrimage is something more than a tourist vacation. And maybe you didn't realize you were on it at the time. May we each bring ourselves to a greater understanding in this day of our living our lives, living as a congregation, and in a time of pilgrimage. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Now is the time in our service where we receive your weekly offering. All of our Sunday non-pledge cash offerings are shared with monthly Charities with Soul, and this month's charity is Oasis Free Clinic. Please join me in our congregational response. May these offerings sustain and grow the work of this church, weaving a tapestry of love and action. Thank you.
Our final hymn gets to our past with the two streams of Unitarianism and Universalism meeting and merging. Some of you may know the history of this hymn, but for those who don't, this is a very short version of it. Marion Franklin Ham wrote this lyric in 1933 in advance of the first hymnal that was created and shared by the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, the Hymns of the Spirit, sometimes called affectionately the Red Hymnal. It was intentionally written to celebrate that growing relationship between the two denominations that were finding it useful at that time to work together. As the final votes were cast in 1961 and a new Unitarian Universalist Association was formed, the assembled sang As Tranquil Streams, and I now ask you to join me in singing hymn number 145, or on your screen, As Tranquil Streams. Please stand as you're willing and able. My closing words are by my colleague, Deborah Hafner. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry, thirsty, doubting that we should have ever come. But look around. We are not alone. It is our journey together. A journey to our better selves, a journey for a better world, a journey to be a more promised land. And now we will extinguish the chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking outside our walls to the world we live in until we are together again.
Well, say hi to everybody and join us at the picnic.